Dealing damage is one of the main aspects of Hypixel Skyblock. At the end of the day, if you don't deal a lot of damage, you're not going to be able to compete in endgame situations, such as being in the Crimson Isles, the higher floors in dungeons, or maybe even just killing one of these big boys. Now, as I said before, in order to progress relatively far into Skyblock, at some point you're going to need to do damage. Now, the damage that you do is going to be composed of many different aspects, such as pets, armor sets, weaponry, magical power, and so on. But when buying or crafting a weapon, I guess a lot of people probably have the same dilemma. And that dilemma is whether to use or whether not to use One For All. For those of you who don't know what One For All does or what One For All is, it's basically an ultimate enchantment that removes all other enchantments but increases your damage by 500%. And as the enchantment says, if you use One For All then you can't use any other enchantments. So what we're going to do is we're going to test out two pretty much identical weapons, one with One For All and one with regular enchantments, and then we're going to go through the pros and cons of One For All and see what is best for you. The weapon we're going to be using is the Giant Sword. So we've got this Giant Sword here, which is Soul Eater and then most tier 6 enchantments. And we're going to go ahead and buy this Giant Sword here, which is its equivalent, but it's just One For All. Both weapons are withered, 5-starred, recombobulated, fuming potatoed, with fine gemstones. Now, okay, we know what One For All is, but we're going to take a look at the other Giant Sword that we're going to be using, which is the non-One For All variant, which has got, obviously, a variety of different enchantments. So as you can see, our ultimate enchantment is Soul Eater 5. Now that enchantment alone is 18 million coins, which is around about, well, 15 million more expensive than the One For All. Having said that, let's take a look at what it actually does. Your weapon gains 10 times the damage of the latest monster you killed, and adds it onto the end of your next hit. So for instance in dungeons, if you kill a really healthy mob like a fel or something like that, and then kill something else, that next hit is going to deal a lot of damage. Which means essentially, One For All is going to do consistent damage, but Soul Eater and other enchantments have the potential to do way more damage. Now, we also have other enchantments on here like Siphon, which is going to be massive for healing. And of course, we've got things like Luck and Looting, which is going to help with getting drops and things like that. Now, this isn't a maxed out Giant Sword. By all means, you can spend way more coins and get this fully maxed out with like tier 7 enchantments, but it's going to cost way more coins. Now, this Giant Sword that I've got here costs around about 250 million coins, and the One For All Giant Sword, as you just saw, bought for 195 million coins. So this one is around about 55 million more expensive. Anyway, on to the damage test. So we're going to be using this Necron set with our Tarantula helmet. We're going to be using this Golden Dragon, which is not exactly ideal, but we're going to use the same pet for both damage tests, so it's not going to make much difference. Got our Power Stone on Hurtful, and we're going to try and bring our crit damage up to just about the same as our strength. Okay, there we go, that's much more even. Anyway, it's time to damage test. Now, we're going to damage test against various different mobs, because of course, the higher health the mob, the more damage our Soul Eater Giant Sword is going to do. But against the mobs in the graveyard, we're going to test our One For All Giant Sword first, and that's going to deal around about 759k damage, 760k damage. Okay, and our Soul Eater Giant Sword is going to deal 521k. Yeah, around about 525k damage. So against lower health mobs, of course, One For All is going to do substantially more damage. Now just to build this up, we're going to head down to the Crypt Ghouls, which have, you know, they're quite more substantial than the regular graveyard zombies, but they're nothing special. Now, first of all, we test our One For All Giant Sword, which is going to deal around about the same damage, so 765k, which is virtually the same as last time. And our Soul Eater Giant Sword, we need to get the first hit out of the way, and now, okay, we need to do another test. That's going to do 575k, 575k, so as you can see, we're doing slightly more damage. Okay, now we're going to head over to the end into the Zealot Bruisers, which have quite a lot more health, so in theory, I would expect our Soul Eater Giant Sword to probably do more damage than our One For All at this point. Or it might be close. Anyway, our One For All Giant Sword is going to do around about the same damage. It's going to be around about 777, so it's gone up slightly, but it's around about the same. As for our Soul Eater Giant Sword, it's going to deal around 542, but this is the real one, 884k. So already at mobs that are 65k health, our Giant Sword is substantially better. Well, around about 100k more damage. But we need to move on to higher health mobs to see just how different these two weapons really are. But before we do, this is just a reminder to subscribe to the channel. Most people aren't. Become part of the 23%, there's really no reason not to. Also, you should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of every single video. If you need dungeon carries or even Slayer carries, we've got you covered. And if you want to carry, you can also do that too. Anyway, back to Soul Eater and One For All. Okay, so now we're in the Crimson Isles, the home of high health mobs. And we're going to test on these magma cubes. They have 1 million health, and our One For All Giant Sword comes up first. Okay, as you can see, it's still dealing consistent damage, around about 773k. As for our Soul Eater Giant Sword, we may need to just get maybe the first kill in, and then we can get the real damage. Okay, here we go. 1 million, okay? How much difference there is now. On the higher health mobs, it's doing 1 million a hit. It's one-tapping them. So, Soul Eater, 1,034,000. One for all. Okay, one for all. That was definitely not an accurate representation. 773k. The literal difference is crazy at this point. Now, of course, like I mentioned before, with one for all, you just solely have extra damage, whereas with regular enchantments, you have things like Champion, which give you more combat XP or combat wisdom, you know, same thing. Of course, you can even upgrade to Sharpness 7, which is going to make your base damage 5% extra. You've got all of these other enchantments like First Hit, Thunderlord, Vampirism, like Cubism, Critical. There's just, the list is endless. Of course, the main reason why this weapon is doing more damage than the One for All Giant Sword at this point is Soul Eater. But for instance, even if we let the Magma Cube hit us, okay, as you can see, we need to lose a bit of more health, okay. Now we're going to go ahead and kill it. You see, we're actually gaining health when we kill it, if you see. We're gaining hearts. That's not going to happen with One for All, because there's no Siphon, or there's no lifesteal ability able to actually put on those swords. Okay, we're now going to test the two swords out against a Tier 5 Revenant. I mean, it's not a massive test, but we should be able to see the difference in how quickly the bosses drop. Okay, so this is with the One for All Giant Sword. Hopefully I don't die. I mean, to be honest, it just goes off luck as well and where you spawn the boss, but I'm getting quite a few hits in, and it's just not dropping. Okay. I assume the One for All may be a little bit slower. Hopefully the Soul Eater is a little bit quicker. However, for things like bosses, I'm pretty sure the damage increase goes off the last mob you've killed, so technically if I haven't killed anything massively high in health prior to it, then I don't know. I don't know if it's actually going to be quicker. Okay, this is with the Soul Eater Giant Sword. I mean, I would usually use an Axe of the Shredded to do this anyway, but I don't see a massive difference, to be completely honest. I feel like I'm even doing less damage. I've got to be doing less. That took so much longer. Wait, what? And yeah, it makes sense because, well, the last mob that I killed would have been lower HP, so therefore I'm going to be doing substantially lower damage with the Soul Eater weapon than the One for All. Now, in theory, if you spawned in some... I mean, if you killed somebody else's boss, maybe, and then killed your own, it would be way quicker. But, yeah. If you're doing Tier 5 revs on your own, you're actually probably better off with the One for All weapon. It's actually surprising, but it makes sense. So, honestly, I've got to say, in my situation, the Soul Eater Giant Sword is much better. Now, I'm not recommending that you use a Giant Sword, in order to do Tier 5 revs. You should probably use an Axe of the Shredded because it does do more damage. But depending on what you wanted to do in the game, really, sort of dictates whether you should buy Soul Eater or regular enchantments. I mean, Soul Eater 5, for the most part, is always going to be better. I mean, it's a much more expensive enchantment. But this is just a test. It doesn't have to be a giant sword. I mean, for instance, weapons like Livid Dagger, Shadow Fury. The list is, to be honest, pretty much endless. For instance, when I do Tier 5 revs, I usually use this Axe of the Shredded, and I've got One for All in it. And to be honest, that's for pretty much the same reason as what you've just seen. Now, I would have done a damage test in dungeons, but Giant Sword, I mean, it is more of a mage weapon, if anything, rather than a berserk weapon. And really, we were sort of testing One for All against Soul Eater, and I don't think it would have been very accurate if we tested it as a mage. So what I would say is, if you're trying to kill lower tier mobs and you just need to increase your damage, I would use One for All. At earlier stages of the game, I'd say it's probably better. However, as we saw when we went to the Zealot Bruiser hideout in the end, I mean, I wouldn't really say the end is late game. It's killing the end, killing the Zealot Bruisers. They have 65k health. You don't really need to do... I mean, 65k health isn't a massive amount of damage that you need to do. But even at that point, when we were killing those mobs, we were doing more damage with the Soul Eater Giant Sword, but at the same time, you wouldn't have even needed to do anywhere near that much damage. Of course, my stats are going to be different to yours, and I can't speak for everyone. What I will say is if you're trying to kill higher tier mobs, or if you're trying to do higher floors of dungeons, then I will say with almost 100% certainty that using Soul Eater 5 and regular enchantments is going to deal you more damage. So in conclusion, I wouldn't say, in theory, really, Soul Eater is better than One for All. I mean, Soul Eater is definitely better than One for All in certain circumstances, but not 100% of the time. And to be honest, cost is quite a big factor. Like you see with this giant sword here, this one cost me around 240, 250 mil. The one that I've relisted is going back up for 195 mil, the same price that I bought it for. So, I mean, it's a 20% difference, and that difference is going to scale. You also have to think that the giant sword that I've got doesn't even have tier 7 enchantments. So this giant sword with regular enchantments could potentially do quite a substantial amount more damage. So it could be even better than the One for All sword. But I don't know, let me know what you think in the comments, I'd like to know your opinion. I'd say it's quite fair to say that in some circumstances, One for All can be better than Soul Eater and regular enchantments, but, you know, for the most part, Soul Eater is probably going to be better for, I'd say, majority of the people. Especially with higher tier weapons. Anyway, that's going to just about wrap up today's video. I hope you all have enjoyed. If you have, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.